Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ. His true Latter-day Saint is sitting in the omniscience of the Lord, not in time and space. But praise the Lord, because this whole work that one should be doing in life, practicing and practicing and reading, and the cutting the knots of material consciousness all starts with this in 2 Corinthians 13. Test yourselves to see whether you are living in the faith. This is verse 5. Examine yourselves. Perhaps you yourselves do not realize that Jesus Christ is in you. Oh, unless, of course, you failed the challenge. You did not rise to the occasion and the whatnot. I understand. The love of the world has enamored most people. And let's see here in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. The Spirit of God, that's so unbewildering preached by the peoples of the world. Do not suppose that my mission on the earth is to spread peace. My mission is to not spread peace, but the sword. And that's the sword of division. I've come to set man at odds with his father or daughter, with her mother. In short, to make man's enemies those of his own household. Whoever loves mother or father, son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He who will not take up his cross and come after me is not worthy of me. He who seeks only himself brings himself to ruin, whereas he who brings himself to nothing for me discovers who he is. Lifting up the Son of Man, coming to me. This is now chapter 11, Matthew, verse 28. Come to me, all who are weary and find life burdensome, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon your shoulders and learn from me, for I am gentle, humble of heart. Your souls will find rest, for my yoke is easy and burden is light. And that's if we lift up the Son of Man in spiritual consciousness. For he who welcomes you welcomes me. He who welcomes a prophet because he bears the name of a prophet receives a prophet's reward. So he who welcomes a holy man because he is known to be holy receives a holy man's reward. And that's why I offer all of those that listen, thou shalt have the bread of life if you believe in Jesus Christ and just in his name. We all come in the name of the Lord, but we all make way for the one that comes in the name of the Lord, which is Jesus Christ. So in man's time, he has a hard time sticking to righteousness, doing the right things in life. And the book of this Hagakure, samurai code of honor, this is what men of old have always known. And even then, too, it's very philosophical and principled in religion as well. But it's just in our ill-religious day, the philosophers of our time do not take in the religious principles, and therefore they cannot heighten or gain true knowledge. And one of the reasons as to why man is dwindling in knowledge is for one of this reason as well. It's a very profound one, which you can really see definitely in our modern times. This one contrasts definitely in our modern time. So none of this is chapters. Well, it's a chapter, right? But there's all these little points, as you can see, right? And all these little points have just little brief stories. And they're very interesting. So according to a certain person a number of years ago, the late Mr. Cohen told this story. In the practice of medicine, there's a differentiation of treatment according to the yin and yang of men and women. There is also a difference in pulse. In the last 50 years, however, men's pulse has become the same as women's. Noticing this, in the treatment of eye disease, I applied women's treatment to men and found it suitable. When I observed the application of men's treatment to women, there was no result. Thus I knew that men's spirit had weakened and that they had become the same as women. And the end of the world had come. Nowadays, buddy, that's what we're preaching here, is the judgment day of the Lord. And as you can see here, the gentrification of men and women, well, back then it happened. And this book was written in the 1700s. And men were transforming more into women because their spirits were weakening. And the main reason for that, well, in at least the samurai culture, at least the culture in Japan, was that the men were not living up to their martial valor anymore. And one of their duties in the country to perform martial valor was not only war and learning how to fight in martial arts, but it was also beheading. Like you had to, someone had to behead for the criminal activities, and that was a ritual and a very prominent ritual in the Japanese culture. And men over time started getting more clever, and they thought they were getting clever and smarter, as it explains in the book here, and they were avoiding these duties. You see, their spirits, as it says, as this man observed in medicine, what he's saying is some guy with his eye problem, he was giving him male treatments because he's a male, but it didn't work. And he gave him a female treatment for his eye, and it worked. And he's saying that the spirit of the men have weakened because they've been, well, not living up to their martial valor as much. Men have, over that time as well, too, beheadings became less prevalent. Also, harikuri, like committing seppuku, which is a ritual suicide. And men were scared even to do that. So to even become a retainer of knowledge, if this guy, right, he had to live with a master, and what a retainer of knowledge is basically learning whatever your master taught you, and you keep all of that knowledge. So you basically, that guy's like his Google or dictionary basically. So people walk around in the ancient days with masters and retainers. So that was also prevalent in ancient societies, as people that were retaining knowledge off of prominent people that had the knowledge, you could say. And some of the rituals now that that people weren't following was, if your master dies in some shape, form, or fashion, you have to kill yourself too to honor your master. And some of the like devotees or retainers of knowledge wouldn't do that, and that's contributing to the weakness of the spirit of men. It's some of these things that were not being performed, you could say, as like a duty or custom, because men started getting clever and not wanting to do these things, and like I say, dishonoring their master and not performing these rituals of. In his time, it's around the 1700s. This is when Japan stopped doing like you didn't have to commit these ritual suicides if your master died. So that was new to Japan around the 1700s, where you didn't have to do those rituals anymore. And because they were cutting off of these rituals that really required one's spirit and strength to perform, men were losing their spiritual strength and weakness. And in our society, it's a big thing as well too. So it even says now, when looking at men today with this in mind, those who could be thought to have a woman's pulse are many indeed, and those who seem like real men few. Because of this, if one were to make a little effort, he would be able to take the upper hand quite easily. And this is one thing I also learned at my job too, because people are weakened these days, they're lazy. Just a little bit of effort brings you above the rest of the crowd because they're all weak and lazy. That's what that statement means right there as well too. Because of this, if one were to make a little effort, he would be able to take the upper hand quite easily. That's because of this degradation of the population. That there are few men who are able to cut well in beheadings is further proof that men's courage has waned. And when one comes to speak of another form of ritual, it has become an age of men who are prudent and clever at making excuses. 40 or 50 years ago, when such things are as matakuki were considered manly, a man wouldn't show an unscarred thigh to his fellows, so he would pierce it himself. All of man's work is a bloody business. That fact today is considered foolish. Affairs are finished cleverly with words alone, and jobs that require effort are avoided. I would like young men to have some understanding of this. That's why I would love people to have some understanding of this book, and the master and the retainer of knowledge. That's why I call this like the pinnacle of man's knowledge. Man's knowledge. This is the heavenly realms of knowledge. See, this is different. This is what the Lord wants us to do, to come out of this world of men and into his spiritual kingdom. That's, I mean, very cut and dry there, Elon Musk. It's pretty simple. Even though it takes brilliant, brilliant minds like him to say no, that's just the truth. And that's why the Lord comes with the sword, to cut us out of matter, material consciousness. Now, there was another one here, too, that was good, that I wanted to make a... Yes, which one also? Come on, don't make a fool out of me now. Well, there's a good one here too. The word illusion or apparition in India. A man who uses conjurations, a master of illusionary technique. Everything in this world is but a marionette show. Thus, we use the word Zen. So the Zen Buddhists have used this word Zen to basically say that everything in this world is but an illusion, a marionette illusion. That's also the pinnacle of... See, they have that knowledge because they're also Buddhists. They don't just apply philosophy. They also have the religion. That's what religion is. That's all this knowledge is their knowledge of religion as well. Ah, yes. So this other one too. To hate injustice and to stand on righteousness is a difficult thing. Furthermore, to think that being righteous is the best one can do, and to do one's utmost will be righteous. On the contrary, it might bring many mistakes. The way to a higher place than righteousness. This is very difficult to discover. See, the way to higher knowledge. That's why this book is also a pinnacle of the philosophy of the Buddhists in reality as well, because they had to live these things. That's why these men, this book is extremely important. And we'll put it out here. The way to higher knowledge than righteousness. This is very difficult to discover, but it is the highest wisdom. When seen from this standpoint, things like righteousness are rather shallow. If one does not understand this on his own, it cannot be known. There is a method of getting to this way, like the Tao, however, even if one cannot discover it by himself. This is found in consolation with others. Talk like I did in my early way. The Michael Tessarians, basically him for a while, because he had this, truth at this time too, that I was gravitating towards. And it was bringing out of society. And basically saying that all man's a scam artist, like a marionette show. Jen, yes, that's the truth too. And then it furthers up to other men. So what he's trying to say here too is the way is found with talking with others as well. Even a person who has not attained this way sees others from the side. It is like the saying from the game of Go. He who sees from the side has 8 eyes. The saying, thought by thought, we see our own mistakes. That's also too repentance, seeing our own mistakes and not doing them again. That requires common sense, sound logic, thinking, and reasoning. That's like the trivium. If you're not trained in sound logic, then you won't understand what's going on, even in your own experience. And your reasoning won't be settled out, which is the decision-making faculties. So not seeing your own mistakes means one hasn't sharpened their logic. And therefore, they reason that they can just keep doing these things because, they haven't seen the faulty logic. So that's also about being on the way. If one doesn't know themselves enough, they talk to others, gain knowledge, and improve their logic and reasoning disposition. In this path, we bring the logic and reasoning faculties up into the spiritual realm. So one that has been on the path of common sense and knowledge for a little bit, they're going to be left on their own. So that's now our logic is to come to me, all who are heavy laden and burdened. Our logic is lifted into just spiritual consciousness, which is enlightenment, which is the way, as it's said here in this book, the way. He's always emphasizing the way. The way is very difficult, but that's relying now on the spiritual coming to me. And that's how we fulfill our life now. We don't look to this outer world. So that's what our logic tells us in all situations. Even though it's very difficult, Captain, we're heading into the Klingon territory. Yeah, I know that, Mr. Spock. But we still gotta go there. Mr. Spock is very logical, as you can see. We know these things, but the captain is still the captain. He has to go the way. And sometimes logic doesn't approve of the way. That's why the way is the void. It's unreasonable and illogical, Captain. That's why he doesn't like even the worldlings. The Vulcan, he's a Vulcan. That's all his thing is logic. And he's basically like the enlightened man. He suppressed his emotions. Like the Buddha was talking about. He suppressed his emotions, his desires, his sensations. Come to me. So that's what Spock represents, is just no emotions and all logic, though. But he hasn't reached the spiritual one intelligence. I guess he does later on get friggin' enlightened anyways. And the other friggin' Star Trek, I'm so much of a nerd here, but I'm just saying, your logic has to be now rooted in illogicalness, Captain. But you see that duality there, logic and illogic? Don't make the mistakes as the early Zen Buddhists did, or the later Zen Buddhists did. Because they try to fornicate around with this idea of the illogical approach to life that will give them spiritual enlightenment. That's why your knowledge, you can't jump off the mountain like when Satan tempted Jesus Christ. If you're going to approach the illogical approach to the spiritual way, then you have to jump off that mountain, because you have to depend on this invisible now that'll save you, and that's illogical. Perfect, great way to fucking test your illogical there capacities. You can just jump right off the bridge and don't worry, a legion of angels will, unless your foot touches a stone, a legion of angels will save you. Don't worry, Captain, just make the jump. I know that's illogical, but that's what these later Zen Buddhists were trying to do. And since they lost the way, they didn't know that the way is taken by silence, not taking thought, because the one intelligence. So that's what the human being in darkness, he believes he has his own intelligence, and now he has this illogical approach to life, and logical approach not just to life itself, but to try to get to spiritual living and the spiritual consciousness. Couldn't do that fornicating around with logic and illogic. That's why they lost the way, and there is no true retainers of, you could say, the way. Except for people, I could say I'm a retainer of that knowledge, because I'm on the way. As Joseph Benner his work says, the way out and the way beyond. Well, we're on the way beyond at this point, because we develop spiritual consciousness. We have the awareness that God made itself known to us. That's what we do in this work, is we get our mind prepared for that. And that's what this whole way is about. But the highest way is in decision with others. Yeah, like you have to have agreements with knowledge, but people that have been on this way, your knowledge has to conform to them. I have to conform to like Lao Tzu's knowledge and this guy's knowledge. His name is Yamamoto Sumit. Oh man, I'm sorry, Mr. Yamamoto. But yeah, I have to conform to his knowledge. I can't be a wise guy and say I know this and let's match up here. No, that's what surrender. And yes, you have to surrender to the discussion of others as well. You can't say I'm a wise guy, or else then good. Go live life yourself then. Why are you even inquiring? Why are you even listening to other people then if you got it all figured out? One has to have supreme logic in that. And some guys do, but they're going to fall down anyways. You have to have conformity with others that have been on the way, especially Jesus Christ. If you're going to be on the way, the truth and the life, that's why it tells you to follow the Sermon on the Mount. Practice forgiveness. I have to practice forgiveness all the time. That's just how it works. You have to do that. If not, you're not his disciple. If you can't pick up your cross and follow him in his ways, the way, then it's some other concocted religion of something else. That's also what men love to do, is practice their religion, right? So let's say if a guy wants fucking 20 wives. Oh, great. Let's just concoct some religion and conform our beliefs to this principle now that we want 20 wives. Sure, why not? Until the government says no, but even then, who cares? They're still going to do it behind closed doors. There's this guy's book. I forgot his name now. Rick Strassman, I think. And he wrote this book about some nonsense because he's just a fornicator trying to get into polygamous relationships. And he couldn't handle it anyways. He wasn't man enough. He wasn't man enough just to throw it down. That's what this guy's problem was. He's too much of a pussy. He was one of these guys that were engendered with a little bit of too much female anyways. So he had 3 hot smoking broads in a house. And this guy was fornicating with one, and he was getting weak in his mind, worrying about what the other ones would think. And that's all when the other ones started playing their ego games and just started running in control, brother. He lost control of his sexual fantasies and concoctions that these rich people can do. All blew up in his face. Why? Just undisciplined idiots first. Don't know what they're doing. They don't even have the knowledge to even have that situation. He doesn't have the sexual prowess or the man handleage to handle that situation. That's why people fail in life in general, because they think they're good at something and they're not, and then they fucking find out later that they're not. So that's what that guy's book's about, and how he had to go to sexual psychiatry because he's a freaking idiot anyways. And he has, like, what Sigmund Freud would call sexual concoctions with his mother. His mother tried to smother him or some shit. And now he's all these people and their ideas anyways. They don't know the way. So now, because being see, that's another guy's like being tormented sexually or whatever. He wasn't tormented by his mother that way, but just like nonsense that people conjure up themselves. And then they have to go out in the world and try polygamous relationships because it's fun, and go around in clubs and fornicating with girls too, and just gangbang clubs. Yeah, how's that work out for you? Apparently these guys, it's just an empty experience. It doesn't even matter if it happens or it doesn't happen at the end of the day. They don't even care. All these experiences just happen so much to them anyways. It's almost like playing a game over or watching your favorite TV show over and over again. Even though when people are in time and space experiencing these things over and over again, that's when things get shallow and vain. And they're wondering even why they're doing that while they're sniffing a mountain of cocaine in a hotel room. Oh, we're so cool, bruh. But you can't listen to people of the way. That's why the way's been lost, because it's been locked in a monastery where guys shave their heads and chill in bathrobes. That's where I should be, away from the world, with my head shaved in a bathrobe. That's because listening to old stories and reading books are for the purpose of sloughing off one's own discrimination and attaching oneself to that of the ancients. I don't know, man. Scriptures, the ancients. Very, very good. Let's see here. 36, and we'll call it quits for now. What do we got here? Oh, this is great for the worldlings, because they'll... Oh my God. This is everyone's fool's dream, right? Everyone concocts a dream. I have my dreams, and this is my dreams. Welcome to the way. Welcome to men. This is the real way. That's why I want to preach the way, because it also is found in the Orient, not just by the Hebrews, but also by all the other race that God planted his word into as well and built up a crop. Well, let's see here. The cream of the crop, macho. The macho man, he brings shame to himself because he did not take revenge. Uh-oh. We're going back now a couple thousand years where revenge was still a hot topic. The way of revenge lies in simply forcing one's way into a place and being cut down. Giving, sacrificing, just Rambo, going up in there and just expecting to be cut down anyways. There is no shame in this. See how men think? There's no shame in going there and getting cut down anyways, because by thinking that you must complete the job, you will run out of time. So don't think too much. I won't, don't be doing this anyways in real life, especially for no reason to. But by considering things like this, how many men the enemy has times piles up. In the end, you will give up because you're just thinking too much, taking too much thought. That's why the master tells you not to take thought. But you're just going to run into your doom and get cut down anyways. No matter if the enemy has 1,000 men, there's fulfillment in supply, standing them off and being determined to cut them all down. And starting from one, that's what you have to do in this work too. You have to be effing determined. This is also what I'm trying to preach, as the determination of the way. Remember when the Lord gave me the Wallace in my life, and I lost everything, the sword, and the Lord cut the material knots in my life, and if I was not determined, the Lord would have left me dead. Remember Deuteronomy, life and death. Choose which one are you going to do. So when the Wallace comes with an infinite amount of DPS, and it's inscribed on the bottom, those that don't believe will be smitten, and it comes dropping on your head with mega crits, so you didn't friggin' realize it exists before. What you gonna do, brother? When life runs wild on you, when the shores of life bat up against like the rocks of the edge of the sea, you have to stand those. So you have to be determined to cut down the enemy and stand in the midst of the waves of the shores. I did that in my life. But then the shores beat you down a little bit. And that's when you have to come to me, all who are heavy laden and burdened. At a certain point, this is exactly my experience, actually. I stand there like the warrior, and the sheaves were, that's what the principle was, just in the letter. Because this is when I wasn't praying over those times. The waves were going, oh, come on. And also, standing in my ground, being steadfast in knowledge and truth, and not giving up and being determined. Now, even though those waves could resemble 1,000 men, and that's what it could be in your experience. Whatever 1,000 men it is in your life, right? Well, I was trying to explain, like the Evander Holyfield be coming up in your experience. That's the real deal now. There's 1,000 men at your door, and you got to be determined to cut them all down. That's spiritual consciousness. You can't give up, and the Lord will help one. The Lord will give one. That's the whole thing about coming to me, all who are heavy laden and burdened, and I will give thee the peace, not as the world gives, but as I give. The Lord will strengthen you. So that's also one thing too, is making sure that you're standing your ground and being determined, that when you're faced with adversity in life, that's like the 1,000-man army. Oh, hello, Jessica. Jessica's the 1,000-man army right now. And I got to be determined to stand my ground and say no. And that's how it is in life. It doesn't matter who comes. They're all just have to be cut down eventually. Now, what do we see here? Now, by considering things like this, how many men the enemy has, they'll pile up, blah, 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 okay? Now, no matter if the enemy has 1,000 men, there is fulfillment in simply standing them off and being determined to cut them all down. Starting from one end, you will finish the greater part of it. Concerning the night assault of Lord Asano's Ronin, the fact that they did not commit seppuku at the end of Sengaguchi was an error, for there was a long delay between the time their lord was struck down and the time when they struck down the enemy. If Lord Kira had died of illness within that period, it would have been extremely regrettable, because the men of the Kamigata area have a very clever sort of wisdom. They do well at praiseworthy acts, but cannot do things indiscriminately, as was done in Nagasaki fight. Although all things are not to be judged in this manner, I mention it in the investigation of the way of the samurai. When the time comes, there is no moment for reasoning. And if you have not done your inquiring beforehand, there is most often shame. So if you didn't inquire about the situation, you just rush in there, there's most often shame. Reading books and listening to people's talk are for the purpose of prior resolution, so to get some understanding. Above all, the way of the samurai should be in being aware that you do not know what is going to happen next, And that's basically like living in prayer as well. The infinite invisible. You have to surrender to that principle all the time. Don't take thought for your life, and you have to surrender to that truth as well, that you are unaware of what's going to happen in this life, what's going to happen next. Remember, you're in darkness. The light that shines in the darkness is guiding you to the light, and you don't know what's going to happen next. That's why in this work, if you do get in contact with God and all that, you just don't know what's going to happen next in your life. That's why it's the way. And inquiry every item day and night, victory and defeat are matters of temporary force of circumstances. Even the duality of victory, defeat are matters of temporary forces of circumstances. The way of avoiding shame is different. It is simply in death. Well, if you bring yourself to nothing for the sake of the Christ, then the Christ will lift you up and you'll find out who you are. But if you're brought down to great levels of shame, or instead of committing seppuku and suicide, if you bring yourself to nothing, as it says in the scriptures, I said in the video earlier, you will be lifted up and God will take it from there. But you have to bring yourself to nothing. Even if it seems certain that you will lose, you got to retaliate anyways, because that's the nature of man. It doesn't matter if you're about to get knocked out, you still got to throw that punch. And that's how it is too. Even down and out, that's what it is in my experience. Even if you are down and out, you still got to get up and pray anyways. Even if you are going to get knocked out, you still got to face it. A real man does not think of victory or defeat. He plunges recklessly towards an irrational death. Yes, by doing this, you will be awakened from your dreams. That's a profound statement right there. You will be awakened from your dreams. Where is it? There. R. There we go. Try to sneak it in there. That is how it is when one loses his life for my sake. Yes, we'll read now some scripture of Mr. Jesus Christ, because that's very important when one rushes into the Spirit and will lose. When one thinks they'll find their life, they'll lose it for my sake and the Gospels. Well, whoever loves father and mother more than me, he will not take up his cross and come after me, is not worthy. He who seeks only himself brings himself to ruin. You have to run recklessly into battle. Whereas he who brings himself to nothing, you see, he discovers who he is because his dreams are shattered. They came to nothing. That's very profound, because that's also the path of the way. Let's see as well here too. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? All the nets and the nets and the nets. Not the one that I wanted to bring about in Scripture, but I guess we could call it quits here, because this is what you get taught: the Spirit of Truth, who the world can't accept. It doesn't even recognize him or see him, and can't even recognize him at all. But it's in you. Now, yes. Remember, the peace that the world gives. Now that one's dreams are destroyed from rushing headlong into the void, rushing headlong into the way, you have to go back to the Lord. Peace is my gift, not as the world gives, but as I give. And we'll call it quits right there too as well, because that's a little bit of Oriental knowledge, and it coincides beautifully like bread and butter into Jesus Christ's teachings. Thank you all again for tuning in and checking out. If you guys have any questions, I'll be willing to answer them. Take care and have a good day.